Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Sorry about the rain noise. My garage makes quite a bit of noise when the rain's hitting the metal. So hopefully you guys can hear me really good. Last night we got back from Toledo Bend in Louisiana and Texas. And man, I'd absolutely call it a success. If you guys kept up with all the practice videos that I did, you'd know that you know, as much as I try to put on a happy face during videos like this, I was dying inside. I was really not having a great practice. I didn't catch any big fish. Didn't even see a big fish really. I mean, I saw some cruisers that were decent, but I never caught a fish over 3 pounds. In fact, I had 2 fish that could potentially be in that 3 pound range. But overall, I knew that the field was going to crush it and catch big bags, and I knew that what I was on in practice definitely was not the deal. However, during the tournament, you know, one thing that I'm good at is if I have a bad practice, which I've had a lot of bad practices and which result in good events, is I like to keep things simple and focus on things that I'm supremely confident in. You know, not run around all over the place, try to make things happen that way. Really just bear down and figure out the little things that you can do in your wheelhouse to catch as much weight as possible. And it worked out. We ended up getting a 24th place finish, which actually happens to be my best Opens finish. I've got a lot of you know, finishes within the money range in the Opens, about 10 to be exact. So about half of the time I'm getting a check, a little bit over half actually. But yeah, it turned out to be a great event, even after such a disastrous practice. But I guess I can't call it disastrous if I have a good event. You know, it really did key me in on where I needed to focus my energy. So today I wanted to kind of go through all the tackle that got me all my weigh fish. So all the fish that I weighed during the event was on 3 separate setups, okay? And so just kind of laying the foundation for how this kind of unfolded. You know, after practice, the only consistent thing that I had was fishing up shallow with a buzzbait and a toad, okay? So I was throwing this white Z-Man goat toads around during practice, and this was one of the only things that I could get bid on consistently. However, like I said, I wasn't only catching smaller fish in practice. They were skinny, looked almost like, you know, fry garters. They just had no, you know, they weren't substantial enough for a decent bag. So that's what I was worried about. But those shallow fish really, you know, made me realize that there is a good population of fish in this particular creek. And if I knew the name of the creek, I'd let you guys know. It's the second biggest creek up from the launch ramp on the eastern side. But I was essentially just fishing cypress trees and the flooded bushes with the higher water. I know it wasn't full pool, but it still was high enough to flood that cover. So going into the event, I had a particular, you know, stretch in mind that I was going to start at. But on my way into that area, which it was cloudy, it was a little bit windy that morning, and on my way into that area, I looked to my left, and there seemed to be a bank that on my Navionics card looked really good. It looked like it had, you know, a fairly steep, you know, contour right there at a point, and then there was also some really good cypress trees. So I made a split-second decision to go ahead and set down in the boat channel there and then idle across this big flat, which took about 7 minutes or so. And so it was, you had to be dedicated to that decision. But when I got there, I ended up finding that there was a shad spawn going on the cypress knees. And I actually got a question from somebody, you know, a viewer asking about, you know, doing a video about a shad spawn, and I think that's a great idea, especially hot off of this tournament. So we're gonna do a video all about recognizing the shad spawn and also how to approach a shad spawn and catch fish during it. So that'll be another video, so just keep a lookout for that video that's upcoming. But so this stretch, you know, immediately I started seeing these shad spawning at the bases of the cypress trees. And so I picked up the toad. So this was the first setup I started catching fish on. This right here is the Z-Man Goat Toad. Really well designed, you know, toad bait. It's got these nice kicking feet on there. Creates a good amount of disturbance on the surface, leaves a bubble trail. And I fished that with a 3/0 a Chinlocks kind of you know, weedless swim bait hook. Okay, so it's got the chin lock there, hence the name, and then you got that belly weighted you know, hook right there. This hook right here, usually I'd use probably a 4/0, but in this instance, all I had was the 3/0 with the 1/8 ounce size. And I usually don't fish a toad with a belly weighted hook. And that's for no other reason other than the fact that I started fishing a toad in Florida. And in Florida, all I did was peg a small weight and use an EWG. And it worked great down in Florida. But with this bait in particular, you want it to ride so it's keel down, so belly down, which creates the best action overall. So my buddy Chris Kingery with 44 Tackle kind of clued me into how much better this bait runs with this hook, and I used it, and definitely seeing is believing. So I threw this and caught my first 4 keepers pretty darn quick, including like a 3-pounder. The rest of the tackle on this is 50-pound Seaguar Smackdown braid in the Stealth Gray. Now this honestly would not be my first choice as far as braid for casting something like a toad or a frog or something that's a moving bait. I like Smackdown a lot for my punching and flipping applications, but for my casting applications, I really like the Seaguar Tactics, which is actually a 4-carrier braid. It's a little bit rounder and it feels more abrasive, but I think it casts better. But I just ran out of that line. I thought I had it, but I didn't. But I mean, the Smackdown worked perfectly. It just, to me, just doesn't cast quite as good as that Tactics, but it worked excellent. Never broke fish off or anything like that. Never had any failures. So 50-pound braid. I used the 7.3 Extra Heavy all-purpose series from Fitzgerald. I would suggest, if I was to do it all over again, I didn't have another 7.3 heavy action instead of the Extra Heavy. I think the Extra Heavy is a little bit too much backbone for this technique and for this hook. So I would definitely recommend going down to a heavy action if you're going to replicate this setup. It did work, but I think that you're overpowering this just by a little bit, and the little bit more flex in the heavy action tip is going to get you better cast control and accuracy. So anyways, that's just some notes on what I would have done differently with this setup, but I just didn't have another 7.3 heavy action. And I fished that on a VLD-10, the 7.2 to 1 gear ratio reel. So that's what I started the event with. That goat toad, big key player. It really imitated those spawning shad really well in that area. And then after I felt pretty confident that I'd fished and got all the opportunities I was going to get out of that one stretch, I looked at my Navionics maps and duplicated this shad spawn pattern on another area that had a steeper bank. It was kind of a point and had some good cypress trees on it. So I went there, new water. Both of these are new water. And same thing. Shad were spawning at the base of the cypress trees. And so the bite was on. The fish were crashing on the bait. And so I tried the toad, had several blow-ups, but didn't have any of them that connected, you know, which is very common with a shad spawn pattern or when fish are actively crashing on bait. So I ended up trying several baits, including like I tied on a square bill crankbait to see if I could, like, you know, get one to just swipe at it and get a hook in them. I tried a swim jig, but they just swipe at it and never get the actual bait in their mouth. And then I picked up this bait right here, which ended up really changing the momentum for the entire event. This right here is the Z-Man Sling Blades. I forget the color. I think it's natural shad. I'm drawing a blank right now, but I'll put the name of it in the description below, so you'll get the link. And all these baits, you're going to get a link, an affiliate link in the description below, so you can actually purchase them through 44tackle.com, but it's also a great way to support the channel. You get 10% off your order and you help support the channel Sonar Fishing. So, but anyways, this is a 3/8 ounce sling blade spinnerbait. Of course, we got the Colorado lead blade and then the willow leaf, okay? And we ended up definitely putting a trailer hook on it, okay? So this is the Hayabusa 929 spinnerbait trailer hook. This is a great trailer hook system, okay? This is actually one of my favorite trailer hook systems of all time. So this essentially is what you get. You know, back in the day, I'd use trailer hooks and you'd get like some shrink or some like aquarium tubing or something like that. Works fine. You put it over the eye of the hook and, you know, it works all right. There's two things about this hook that I really like. First is the eye that you slip over the primary hook. It's a little bit narrower, so it restricts the side-to-side movement so the fish can't really push the hook and swing it around and miss the hook. So it stays more stationary on most spinnerbait hooks because it fits a little bit tighter. But also you get these little rubber beads that you put one on first and then you put another one on top of the trailer hook that keeps it in place. So you essentially got this right here. Oh, creating a backlash. All right, so that's what it looks like right there. Usually I'll tighten this up a little bit so it sticks just like that. But that's essentially the trailer hook. This is the 2-aught version, and that helped me catch a ton of fish. The fish went from not wanting any other bait that I threw to absolutely crushing the sling blades. I was just pitching it to the base of the cypress trees, slow rolling it out. You know, most of the bites, I say that they crushed it, but most of the bites actually just kind of loaded up and felt heavy. It was kind of weird. Like you didn't get that like push. Like most of the time fishing a spinnerbait, you lose track of the bait, and that kind of denotes you getting a strike. But this one, it just started getting heavy and you just have to lean into it. I still missed a lot of fish because the fish weren't, they were actively feeding, but they weren't eating the baits very well. But that trailer hook really helped me catch more fish. And no, I didn't use a trailer as far as like a swim bait or anything on it. It was just like this. And even though the water was dirty, I tried white and it just didn't work. But this natural shad pattern was just the perfect imitation of those bait fish. And so the spinnerbait really worked extremely well up until about 10:30. And then once the weather started to change, it started to calm down. The shad spawn started to dissipate a little bit. Then I had to switch things up a little bit. And honestly, I didn't have a great afternoon. Like midday, that first day was very, very slow. And I ended up doing a little bit of sight fishing. That's part of the reason, that's actually the reason why I didn't get the final fish catch on camera. So I am going to be doing tournament recaps videos. But unfortunately, I didn't get my 513 on camera because when I was push-pulling around in the flooded bushes sight fishing, I ended up breaking my Yolotech power stick off the back, you know. But anyways, the spinnerbait definitely caught me up, made a lot of calls with that, missed a few fish, but, you know, it was just all part of it. I was very thankful for getting on that spinnerbait bite. The afternoon, like I said, I caught a 513. So when I came back into that creek after trying to sight fish a little bit, which didn't even see any good fish, I picked up a frog. This one right here, I believe, is the brown leopard color from Z-Man. This is the leapfrogs. This is the 2.75 version of the walking leapfrogs. And let me tell you, I've had a lot of frogfish and a lot of frogfish strikes. What that 513 did to this frog was absolutely epic. He hit it so hard, I thought it could potentially be an alligator, and I was convinced that if it was a fish, it was a bowfin. It hit it just, I mean, it made me jump, and I don't react too quickly to frogfish generally. Like I usually can kind of anticipate it and calm my nerves a little bit, but I was pretty reactive to that strike. It was crazy. It was like a another way of putting it is like it's like osprey coming down and crash bombing this thing. But yeah, so through that, caught that 513, and that pretty much rounded out my day. Had 17.2 that first day. So the second day, oh shoot, you know what? Before I get into the second day, I do need to discuss the tackle, the other tackle on the spinnerbait, because that was such a big player for me on day one. So if I get this untangled from my foot, there we go. All right, so we already talked about the 3/8 ounce sling blades. The line that I was using was 20-pound Red Label fluorocarbon, and I was using the 7.3 medium heavy Versa Series rod and a 7.2 to 1 gear ratio VLD10. So that was the tackle for the spinnerbait. The frog was the same 50-pound Seagar Smackdown braid and the 7.3 heavy, which I think was perfect for working this frog in open water and pitching it and skipping it around these bushes and cypress trees. And then I used a 8.1 to 1 gear ratio reel, which is really important for just overall efficiency. So that rounds out the tackle that we used. So first day, I used all 3 of these baits. The second day, I tried fishing all 3 of these baits, but the conditions were completely different. When we took off, when I launched that morning, I could see every star in the sky that was still in the sky. And so I knew that there was no clouds, there was hardly any wind, and all of those things combined really make for a tough shad spawn, a very, very short shad spawn. So I knew that I had one opportunity to get on a good stretch, to find the shad spawn. So I did decide to start on the same stretch that ended up being my primary stretch, which was my second stop of day one. But when I got there, it was bright, sunny. The sun was shining directly on this bank. And I stayed there for like 5 minutes, tried the spinnerbait a little bit, tried the frog or the toad a little bit, and it just wasn't feeling right. And so I decided to go to the other side of this creek where there is still shaded banks because the sun was on the opposite side of that ridge. And so ran over there and immediately was able to pick up on the what was remaining of the shad spawn. And did try the toad, had plenty of blowups on the toad. A lot of them came up and swiped. None of them really took it under the water. And it was still pretty calm. So I picked up the leapfrogs. And I told myself, today is the day the leapfrogs is going to work the best. And I was right, because I immediately started catching some fish. I was about 45 minutes to an hour in before I got my first one in the boat. But once I made this change and dedicated myself to it, the great thing about a frog is it imitates a shad and a shad spawn very, very well. I mean, the bottom of this frog is very natural shad-like color, but it can also trick a bass that is focusing on bluegill too. So I think it was kind of like a good way to appeal to both type of fish that are feeding on both types of forage. So I picked up this, caught 4 pretty quick. The 5th one took a little bit longer, but then I really started getting on a tear with it and started calling time and time again. So and I just told myself, I'm going to keep the frog in my hand all day, and that's exactly what I did. And ended up catching one just under 4 pounds, which was my best fish. Unfortunately, it ended up dying. I hate it when that happens. Ended up losing, a quarter pound because of that. But, just the fact that the fish died was a real big bummer. But, this ended up being the right choice. The problem was, after I caught that one right under 4, I really didn't get hardly any other bites the rest of the day. So I probably could have made another adjustment, but seeing as that my big fish, my kicker from the first day came in the afternoon, close to the end, I think it was a risk worth taking. And I think that I would do the same exact thing if I was to redo everything. I might switch up the locations a little bit, maybe work the frog a little bit slower because I was working it pretty fast all day. But in general, I think I made really, really good moves and made really good choices as far as the baits that I used to get those bigger bites. But anyways, that is the breakdown, like a pretty comprehensive breakdown of how I caught my fish on Toledo Bend. It was a lot of fun, man. We caught a lot more fish than I ever saw in practice and way bigger fish. And so anyways, guys, hopefully this helps you if you're going out on Toledo Bend or a similar situation on other lakes. But yeah, again, if you're interested in purchasing any of the products that I talked about, a great way to support the channel is use those affiliate links. Another way to support the channel is to ask questions. I love answering questions in video form just like this. So make sure you ask those questions and I'll hopefully get to your question. I know that there's a lot of questions out there that I'm not able to get to just from a volume aspect, but still, if it's a good question, I'm like, that one I need to talk about, I'm gonna do a video on it. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. This event was a perfect example of why you should always trust the process, and I'm gonna see you out on the water. Take care.